Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 76 of the MTB Podcast, presented by Worldwide Cyclery. Myself, Jeff, my excellent co-host,
Jared,
and our special guest,
Eliot.
Nice. This episode, we're going to go over all sorts of things, the various things Eliot is involved in. He is basically a Renaissance man, a humble human being, a professional mountain biker, co-founder of Grow Cycling Foundation, founder of Reggy, and also a Red Bull bike presenter. Did I miss anything?
No, I think that's, yep. You're all good.
So we're going to cover the various things Eliot's involved in. We're also going to talk about world-class level pro mountain bikers' bike and component choices and what's involved behind the scenes in their sponsorship deals and how that plays into what they quote-unquote choose to ride and win on. We're going to discuss the most impactful things the average weekend warrior mountain bike rider can learn from World Cup level professionals. We're going to answer your guys' questions, covering all sorts of valuable topics, all the way to useless and humorous questions that should be entertaining. And of course, what we're all riding, bikes, trails, components, etc. So it's going to be an action-packed episode. Thank you guys for tuning in. Eliot's laughing at me. What's so funny?
Action-packed. Action-packed. Just have an image of like explosions happening. I've never heard someone say that introduce a podcast as action-packed.
If there was ever a podcast action-packed, it's this one.
I got a lot to live up
to. Speaking of which, the image of the explosion, we are going to put this episode, we're going to start putting these on YouTube, not on the Worldwide Cycler YouTube channel, but on an MTB Podcast YouTube channel. It's going to be pretty much just raw recordings of the podcast, and we're going to include that action-packed sound effect image that Eliot said. But maybe DJ Pineapples slide in like a sound effect right now. Action-packed.
Do we have one of those like or like
DJ Pineapple does that?
I think if we had one of those, maybe that's something you guys could invest in for the next couple. I would listen more if maybe you guys had that.
I like that idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, more sound effects.
Yeah.
No problem. We will hop right on that.
Okay.
So, thank you for the feedback, Eliot. Speaking of you, Eliot, let's discuss the various things that you're involved in. So, to start, just for some historical reference, I've known Eliot for, over a decade. We actually grew up in the same town for the most part, Thousand Oaks, California / Newbury Park. And Eliot is involved in a million different things now. Something that's probably very interesting to all the listeners here is that he's a professional mountain biker and been doing that for a long time. Talk about that. Where are you now? Where did you start? Sum it all up.
Totally. So it's all started. Like you said, I think I was racing World Cups for maybe 10 years, and it is really interesting. I got into it a little bit later than most people did. I got
World Cup downhill racing.
World Cup downhill, not XC, not soccer, football either.
Enduro.
Yeah, they don't have World Cups.
Okay, well, EWS.
Yeah.
Still says world in the title. Downhill racing.
Totally.
Downhill racing.
I got my first downhill bike when I was 18, and before that it was kind of just like riding dirt jumps, riding motocross, and doing that whole thing. But got my first downhill bike when I was 18. Went up to Whistler, thought it was like insanely sweet. Came back to Southern California, realized that not everywhere is Whistler. But my friend showed me a bunch of videos of the World Cups, and I was just really, really wanted to go there. Really wanted to ride the tracks and travel around and kind of do that thing. So practiced for a while, year or so, and then there's this really crazy process to make it over there where you have to get a pro license, get your points. I, mapped out this whole thing, read the rule book and all that stuff, and went to Italy with my mom and my brother, and like a multi-tool because I didn't know that you needed to work on bikes. And like it rained one of the days, and somebody was like, "Oh, you should get some spikes." And I was like, "So I'm supposed to put like nails in my tire or like metal spikes? Like what is that?" Like I don't even know what that is. Like so it was actually like my first time out of the country going to race this World Cup in Italy. And
what year was that?
This was 2010. So I went, like actually qualified at my first World Cup race and ended up kind of getting picked up by Yeti and doing the national team thing for a year, but part of that for me was that if I paid my way to go to the World Cups, like they would give me support and I could pit there. So that was kind of like the start of it. And it was really, that's all mountain biking meant to me, was racing World Cups. It was all about going over there and just having these experiences, racing these tracks, and like the mastery of it was always really important to me. Like, how do you get better? What does it look like to practice and train and do all this stuff? So that's what I was doing for the last 10 years, rode for Yeti and Pivot. Last, I guess, 2 years, I raced World Cups, or last year I was on the Giant team, Giant Factor Off-Road team. And then stopped racing World Cups in 2017. And so from there just was kind of, I think it was interesting because I stopped racing because the actual riding portion wasn't as fun as it used to be. And it was kind of like, if, there's always ups and downs when you're in sports, but if you're not having fun riding, then it was kind of like, why am I doing this? So I spent some time over that next year and said, like, what would it look like if I just did exactly what I want to do? Like all this stuff, all these experiences that I've had over the last 10 years, like what were the best ones? And I like went to Trans-Cascadia, did some stuff there. Like I hate camping, but I camped out and it was like the most amazing thing ever. I'm like the least outdoorsy person ever, I guess. But yeah, like just went a lot of different places, did a lot of different things, and really kind of like found my love, what I really like to do with mountain biking, like just riding with friends, traveling around. Like bikes have always been a part of my life. They always will be a part of my life. And it's not just about, racing bikes and going fast. It's just like so much more to it. So I think that was kind of what I've been doing last couple of years, is a series called Crankworks, and have a bit of everything, pump track and slalom and downhill. So I do that and go to Sea Otter, which is in Northern California. And yeah, now we're here today.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's been interesting to see you evolve your racing career from actually racing to now doing all these other various things, but still being more or less like quote unquote professional mountain biker, which is cool. And I think you're not alone in that. There's like a number of other people who have kind of gone that route that aren't just like racing exclusively, but yet are still professional mountain bikers.
Totally.
Which didn't exist a decade ago, but it definitely does now.
Yeah. I think it's so amazing that you can actually do what you love and make a living out of it, whatever that looks like, right? If you want to be a racer, you can be a racer. If you want to do shred it's like, Simonuk, he started in, doing Crankworks, the freestyle stuff, but now he just does web videos. And you have people like that. You have people like Nate Hills, who does YouTube stuff. You have people who are doing like product reviews and everywhere in between. So I think that it's a lot of the stuff that is around now, where you have YouTube, you have Instagram, and it's really allowed people to just figure out what makes them valuable and do that. Because at the end of the day, a racer is kind of just a billboard, just an advertising tool. So if that's the case, then I'm just as valuable, for myself, like going and presenting for Red Bull, going and doing a photo shoot for something. Like I just did a bloody underwear photo shoot.
For which company?
For Saks.
Yeah, SAXX, right?
Yeah,
the guys
totally.
who make the underwear with the nut pouch.
Yeah, they're actually
really nice.
Everyone should buy them,
Yeah.
because they're insane. But it was actually slightly off topic about the underwear shoot. It was super funny because like I never in a million years thought that I would do that, and like I've been not riding a whole lot, and I was like, oh, I should probably lose some weight because they think I'm an athlete still. So like, I need to like start training. And I like called up my trainer. I was like, how do these celebrities like lose all this weight? Like I see them go from fat and skinny, like it needs to be me. And he was like, okay, like here's a diet and like come and do some stuff in the gym. And I went to the gym the first time and like never have thrown up in my life. And he was like, you all good? I was like, no, I'm not going to make it. Like, I was like, I need to go home. So I like driving back from Santa Barbara and like ended up throwing up in like a jug on the way back. I was like, I got a long way to go.
Oh my God.
But the shoot was actually like that's one of the things, I mean, like it's one of the things that I think makes cycling so amazing is that the reason I'm able to do this underwear shoot is because I rode bikes. And it was like kind of a bigger budget, quote unquote, thing where there was like a wardrobe person and a makeup artist and like, photographers and stuff like that. And in between each shot, like somebody would come and like spray the glycerin and like make me look sweaty or whatever. Wow. The wardrobe
the
person
life of an underwear model.
The wardrobe person would come and like pull down the underwear to the perfect spot or whatever. And then at one point she's like, yeah, can you tuck a little bit? And I was like, what does that mean? And she's like, yeah, like readjust, like you're in the wrong. And I was like, oh, right.
Oh, like, okay. I could see why that was confusing. If it was your first
She's
time.
like, yeah, I don't do that. And I was like, yeah, that's good that you don't do that. That's all good. But yeah, totally an aside. But I just think that it's cool, right? That you can take this thing that typically you would see in this one light when you think about professional athletes, professional racers and things like that. And do all of these other things that are totally kind of orthogonal to that and still, make a living, provide people value and just have a good life.
Yeah, that's rad. It's definitely cool to see like how the industry has evolved, especially because of social media and all that awareness. And yeah, it is really cool. Speaking of which, like another thing you've evolved into is Grow Cycling Foundation, which we've actually talked about twice, right? The first 2 episodes we've talked about and plugged Eliot's Grow Cycling Foundation because it's a new thing and it's pretty interesting.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Jared has probably memorized the mission statement from the website and recited it a number of times now. But now that the man himself, the co-founder of Grow Cycling Foundation, is here, give us the mission, man. What's it all about?
Yeah, totally. I think for me, really, so where do I start? So I think one of the things that makes sports amazing is that they're objective, right? Like if I don't win a race, I know it's because I was slower than the other person. And once you're at a certain level, once I'm there, right? Like I was fortunate enough to have parents and a family who could get me to the races, right? To take me to Italy, so that I could have that chance. And I think that's why we see so many different types of people in sports, why sports are so diverse. But in World Cup downhill, throughout the 10 years that I raced, I was actually the only Black person to ever start at a World Cup. And I was talking to Rob Warner, who's the commentary person from Red Bull, and the previous 10 years, there was only one more. So when you start to think about it, and like when I was racing, I didn't really have time to think about any of that, right? Like, it doesn't matter if there's what I'm feeling, right? It doesn't matter if I'm happy or sad. At the end of the day, kind of my job is to win the race. And I had more than everyone in terms of resources to do that with. And so when I got done racing, it kind of freed up a lot of mind share. And especially when the George Floyd murder happened, it was kind of a chance for me to reconcile all of the stuff that did happen, right? Like when people would, like I had people be like, oh, do you think that you're just on Giant because you're Black, right? Are they like trying to fill a quota? Being places and having people like say super racist things, or like I remember I was at a World Cup in France and I was at dinner with the Santa Cruz dudes and some guy just sat down and like said a bunch of super gnarly stuff and like wouldn't leave the table. And like Luca Shaw and Greg Menard like had to almost like physically remove him from the table. And so that kind of stuff would happen, but it's kind of just a part of life, right? Like it doesn't, in my experience with that happening, it doesn't make it. There's this quote from Lewis Hamilton where he's like, I was always taught to kill them with kindness and beat them on the track. And that's kind of how I thought of things, where it's like, whatever, I'm just going to be the best racer I can. So when the George Floyd murder happened, it was kind of like, how do I feel about this? Like I've never made race a platform in my career, partly because I think it always feels so negative, right? Like it always is about people struggling. It's always about how, it's great that I'm the only, I overcame the odds to become, I got a top 10 at a World Cup or whatever. And it's great that I'm the first Black person to do that. And I think that to me, like it never really felt that good, right? Because I see being Black is like, I'm really proud of being Black. I think it's great. Like there are great Black people. There are great people of inventors and musicians and artists, which is one of the things I have kind of talked about a lot when people are like, oh, you're not really Black. And it's like, well, my relationship to Black people is like, these are this amazing group of people. Like, it's kind of like you're saying like, oh, you're not really a cyclist. It's like, well, yeah, I'm a cyclist, you know? So there was kind of a response from the cycling community where like you did have people saying that like, oh, it's like racism doesn't exist here. And, you know, just from the example that I gave, like, yeah, I'm like experiencing it. So it's kind of like, you're kind of out of touch here.
They probably said that because there's no one really to like chime in.
Totally. I mean, and it totally makes, I'm not saying that, I think it's one of those things where if we just, the best example I give is that of grief. So like when somebody's loved one passes away, it's not like you ever say like, oh, it's good that was, you know, a long time ago. You're not grieving anymore. Like you're not sad anymore. Or like that doesn't matter anymore. Because you know, that's not true. And so like when somebody says to you like, oh, you don't feel that anymore. It's like, well, kind of how would you know? Like just because you're not experiencing this thing, like kind of doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So it's more of to me, like more of an empathy thing, to be able to believe someone. And so, you know, I think that it was, so going back to kind of, that was kind of my, the reason that I wanted to do something about it was like, I've found my voice. And then the actual act of starting it, Katie Holden, who I've known forever, used to race World Cup downhill. And now she is an ambassador for a lot of really cool companies, really tells great stories. And so when she came to me, we started it and we were like, what does it look like to kind of put something in place that can do more? That's not just maybe giving a bike, because you give a bike and, you know, people lose interest, get stolen, breaks or whatever. And then you give another bike the next year and now you've affected two people's lives. But for us, it was about saying, cool, like, why don't we do something where, you know, people can ride that same bike, develop mechanicking skills, and then we can give them an opportunity to get a job in the industry. So you have this complete path. And we're building a pump track in Los Angeles. And for us as well, it's kind of about saying like, cool, you can go to this pump track, but then we want to host the world championships there. So you can see people, what it means, right? The bicycle is like a vehicle, like physically and metaphorically, where it can, you know, it's a vehicle, right? It's transportation, but then it can also be like take you around the world, right? Like it allowed me to race for my country, the world championships. It's why I'm talking to you guys right now. And I think one of the things like that I hear a lot is like, oh, bikes are too expensive. But if that were the only barrier, like we would see a lot of like rich Black people, right? Black dentists riding around, but like we don't see that either. So like, I think there's just a lot of cultural stuff when you start to just like peel back, like even one more layer, where it becomes really apparent, where it's just giving people the opportunity, right? Like there were so many things that got lucky, right? That I happened to move to California and happened to meet the right person that introduced me to World Cup downhill. Because if that wouldn't happen, none of my friends knew what mountain biking was. And I think that that's kind of the important thing to say is like not, why should someone from that community even come here in the first place when you have people like you show up to a group ride and like people make fun of your socks or like make fun of a tire that's like too bald. And it's like, why would I want to be there and do that? So yeah, I think for us, we kind of are thinking about it more holistically, more long-term, and really, yeah, that mission of education, access, and opportunity, because everyone in the world is capable of doing things. It's just about if you have the chance to do it.
Yeah, so it's almost like introducing the culture of cycling in all that it encompasses, right? Racing professionally, working in the industry in the various disciplines, introducing that to more and more people at a younger age and showing them that that path exists and this is a really fun tool that could also turn into a really fun career.
Totally. Yeah. I think that's exactly it, where it's about like you said, introducing it. And I think one of the things that we think a lot about is, if you were to have something there, what does it look like to bring that community's culture? Like a kid wheeling in the street in Baltimore, just as much of a cyclist as I am starting at the World Championships. So when I think of culture, I think of like food and music. We have the pump track, like get the local barbecue down there. Like we have Red Bull, bring the little, I don't know what that thing is, a station wagon, like get some people playing music. And like, that's cool. Like that's fun. That's like something that people want to be a part of, not like, a bunch of people talking about spandex and I don't know, derailleurs.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, the cycling culture in general has had kind of a bad reputation for not really being welcoming, right? And that's like something I've noticed being on the retail side, working in bike shops and then owning a bike shop, is that's like a very prevalent thing. Like people are like, yeah, this industry is not welcoming. Like I go into bike shops and people, they're snobs. They're like, oh, like if you don't know what this is, then like I don't want to talk to you. You can talk to this new kid who's working here. He can help you with your flat tire. Like I don't know. It's just there's a bad mentality. And we talked about this the other episode, that consumer direct bike brands, right? Like bike brands that are selling without shops and selling directly to customers. And like that YouTube video we did, and people were surprised on sort of my take on it, the comments were crazy. And so many of them were like paragraphs long, and a lot of them were about the snobbery of bike shops,
right?
And how people felt when they were getting into the sport, right, and the sort of how they were looked down upon. And yeah, I mean, that's really bad. Like that's, let alone like getting into it as a black person from like it culturally wasn't normal, or like your other friends didn't do it. Like, yeah, I can't even imagine. Like that's
yeah. I think you're so right. Like a lot of the stuff I'm talking about and we're talking about, it doesn't matter like what sexual orientation you are or what race, like it happens to all of it. Like we all have that experience of walking into a bike shop, no matter if you're a professional athlete, an owner of a successful company, like just a person that rides on the weekends. Like when you walk into a bike shop, not always, like not digging on all the bike shops, but like a lot of the time, like it's like look at you like you don't even belong there.
Yeah, true.
And kind of the same thing. Like I think if we all even thought about like when we go out and ride with our friends, how likely is it that if somebody just rocked up that you would be like, hey dude, like you want to ride with us? Like, or like if we were to go and do that to somebody else's groups, like it's kind of like, oh, like that's not a thing. Like don't do that. Totally. So I think that's one of the things that I talk about a lot when people are like, what can I do beside donate? And that is what is important, right? And I think that people feeling empowered, where the culture of cycling is all the people listening to this podcast, like that's what makes culture, and having more empathy to say like, yeah, come and ride here, come and check out this part. Like I work in a store or whatever, like that goes, I would much rather people do that and be more welcoming, be more inclusive to people of all races, all genders, all everything, all like incomes, than like donate some money to the foundation. Because if that happens, that will make our job much easier.
Yeah, that's true. I think to me, it's always been welcoming. Like that's sort of what I've always thought. Like the store I worked in as a kid, like the owner was so welcoming. He was just kind and nice and smiled and charismatic as hell, to like, it did not matter who it was that walked into the door. Like he was just a nice guy. Totally. And wanted to see people get on bikes and have fun. And to me, that was super inspiring. And I wanted to have that same mentality and like a big online retail presence, which is like hopefully what we've built Worldwide Cyclery into today. And we definitely hear that feedback. But yeah, just like in general, like, yeah, cycling could be more welcoming, not just in the retail stores, but even out on the trailhead. Totally. Like if you see someone riding by themselves, be like, hey man, do you want to come ride this loop with us? Yeah. Yeah, I think that's huge. That's to me, like also why I've always been a big proponent of NICA. So NICA, National Interscholastic Cycling Association, making mountain biking, the sport of it, an accredited sport in middle school and high school, which it's a nonprofit. I'm super impressed with them. I'm guessing you're probably really familiar with them. Yeah. And also think it's cool what they're doing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I think that, like you said, like having that opportunity in school to be introduced to it. And I think that it does allow schools is one of those kind of equalizers as well, where most people do have the opportunity to go to school. So being able to do, one of the things that we've talked about a lot is like, what does it look like to do a little bit of, I don't know the right word, cross promotion, where you'd have different sports teams, right? Like, what does it look like for the basketball team to go and do some cycling and things like that? But I think, like you were saying, making it an actual accredited sport, and it's nice that we do have it, the cross country side of things in the Olympics, because it gives it some more visibility and some more funding for schools, and that path from, middle school, high school, college, that whole thing. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's impressive what Nike's doing. And we sponsored a Nike race, I think it was a few years ago now, a local one, and it was the funnest thing ever. Like seeing the turnout and how organized it was and all the kids riding bikes, and I was just utterly impressed, because all of us, like when we were in school, we didn't have that.
Right.
But we all now live in the bike industry and have happy careers we enjoy and fulfill us. So it was just so cool to see that. And Nike now is doing, it's called like Nike Adventure. So it's not just racing, because not everyone has to be a racer and like has the whole competitive vibe. I mean, most people aren't racers. Most people just like to go ride bikes for fun and show up and just enjoy themselves and bike pack out and camp, or just go out and do an hour-long loop for the funnest way to have exercise, or what I like to say, the second funnest way to have exercise. I'll leave the first way to your imagination. Mountain biking is just really fun. It's a great way to have exercise. So, I love it, man. I'm definitely impressed and enjoy how much more philanthropic stuff has been just coming about in the bike industry. And I've said that on the last 3 podcasts, and I'll probably continue to be a broken record on that, because I just like it. I think it's cool. And I did hint at a couple episodes ago what we might do for Black Friday, Cyber Monday. As a retailer, we typically do the generic old big sale. But this year, the pandemic obviously has made cycling super popular. Everyone, the entire industry, all the retailers, all the brands, like everyone has very, very, to put it nicely, subpar inventory levels. Jared, you've probably seen this a lot, talking to customers all day, every day.
Talking about broken record, I feel like the word out of stock is going to be ingrained in my mind for the rest of my life. I'm pretty sick of it.
So that's like the story of the cycling industry in 2020, which is great, because like we saw a lot more people do the sport more frequently, and we saw a lot new people get into it, which was fascinating and fun to watch, but has also given us a situation where everything is, like you said, out of stock. So we are going to do a very unusual Black Friday this year, Friday to Monday. We're going to add $5 to every single product on the site. That $5 is going to go to Nike. Gift cards will still be the same price, and if you buy a gift card, you obviously get the whole value, but we cover $5 to Nike, because to me, I don't want to discount a bunch of products and have 60% of the catalog be out of stock. I just feel like that's almost rude.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, why don't we just flip Black Friday on its head, because we have bad inventory levels. Gift cards are going to be, they never expire. It's federally illegal for them to expire, by the way. So you can buy gift cards. If you buy a gift card, you get the whole value. We chip in $5 to Nike, each one that sells, and then every single product is an additional $5. So I'm excited to do that. And I also formally challenge any other retailer in the bike industry. I dare you to not do the BS traditional Black Friday sale and actually do something philanthropic. There you go. So Eliot, you should start pushing all the brands that you're sponsored by to do something of that nature. To support. So I don't know. To me, I just like seeing more philanthropic stuff come in, and like to support it. And to me, it was like, wow, if there was ever such a year to mess around with Black Friday, Cyber Monday, this is the year to do it. So
yeah,
so we'll see how it goes.
We need it in 2020.
Super
for sure.
Cool. Yeah, like speaking of like the brands that we're kind of supported by at the foundation, that has been really cool, because I mentioned the career aspect. So we have these like founding partners of Fox, Yeti, Santa Cruz, and Pink Bike, and Red Bull, and kind of a couple other ones. And we've actually raised like $100,000 and then have another $500,000 committed over the next little course of time. And it's been so cool to see all of these companies, like these people who like Yeti and Fox, like actually reposting each other's stuff, and in the same video call and stuff like that, where they're like actually direct competitors. Mm-hmm. So yeah, speaking of the philanthropic stuff, I think that it's cool, especially this year, where bloody 2020, and to see people coming together in different ways. So that's awesome.
Awesome to see.
Yeah, it's been a crazy year, so nice to see that pulling together. Okay, well, moving on. That was awesome. Thank you for going in depth on that one. I appreciate it.
Of course.
But we're not running out of time and want to get the rest of the show going. So the other couple things to mention that you do, Reggy, and then also a Red Bull bike presenter. So I was challenging you on this prior to starting to record, but what is clearly, concisely Reggy?
I will do this by asking a question. So both of you, like, tell me where the mountain biking group rides are, where the clinics are, and where the races are in your area in the next week or two.
No idea.
Yeah, that's a complete disaster to try to like figure that out.
That is what Reggy is.
Nice.
Nice.
There you go. Solution.
Yeah.
So
I don't even remember like when I was racing more how I even learned about a lot of those races other than just like it's so word of mouth and like Googling, and I mean USA Cycling kind of would help because like you could
social media maybe, right?
It's very much cult knowledge, and I think it says a lot. Like where you have at this table, we have like an avid mountain biker, you know, the owner of a huge mountain biking online store, really tapped into the community, and a professional mountain biker, and none of us can answer that question. So I think it's something that we all take for granted. I think especially once we get into a community, it's kind of like, oh yeah, hit up so-and-so, you know, we have a group text or like a Facebook group or Instagram or whatever. So definitely working on it. It'll be a little bit, but yeah, something to look forward to.
Yeah. And nice. Like the estimated launch of this is?
It's just me programming and stuff. I actually hired someone recently, so we're just kind of cruising through. There's no real rush for it, but hoping early next year.
Yeah. Nice. Cool. Nice. I'm excited for that. And the next thing, Red Bull bike presenter. So for a while there, you were traveling around and presenting races and commentating, and which you have a huge advantage because you're still a racer. You're friends with basically everyone on the field,
right?
And know what's going on. And I remember talking to you about it when you got into it, and like the big thing you were all about was like trying to more articulately explain what these professionals are doing on the bike, because it is hard to understand like when you watch that if you're not there. I mean, the camera never does it justice, like the steepness of the terrain, the sharpness of the rocks, like all of that. So yeah, I remember when you were getting into that, and it was going awesome until 2020 kind of changed the race season a little bit. That's
very true. Yeah, totally, exactly what you said. Like I think the three things that I really wanted to highlight in that process. So the thing was, is I would go to the World Cups and I would walk the track, and we would film a video of me walking the track during practice. I would talk about it. And then after the races, I would do some interviews maybe before. So the big thing I always thought was like when you're watching a race, like you have no context, you're just watching some person fly down the hill.
Yeah.
So the context I tried to give while I was walking the track is like, here's what you should be watching for. Here's the decisions people are making. When you see a rider come up to a section, you say like, are they going to go high here? And if they go high, what was the trade-off they made? Why did they make that decision? So it's really about giving some context for like when you're watching the live feed. And then, like you were saying, I had this huge advantage where I could ask these terrible questions in interviews, and I would just walk up to somebody and say like, how was it? And normally that would be like the worst question ever, because if somebody asked me that, I would be like, it's good.
Yeah.
They just raced, like you saw me. And so, but yeah, it was more like it was a friend thing where people would be like, yeah, I did this and had, you know, this big moment. And so the other thing, and it kind of dovetails maybe into something we'll talk about, which is I really wanted to show like a little bit more vulnerability for the riders, to say like, are you scared? Like what's going through your head right now? Like, you know, last year there's a bunch of drama. It's like, are you nervous? Like you literally have to win this race to win the overall. And what are you thinking about it? Or you just had this huge crash, like what's going through your head? Because I think that there's, especially in a sport like mountain biking or downhill mountain biking, from the outside, it looks like people just take this insane risk. But that's like, couldn't be farther from the truth. So I really wanted to kind of highlight that portion of it. Yeah.
That's rad. Yeah, well, you were just getting your bearings and then 2020, so the race season's a bit weird. But looking forward to next year. Hopefully things are normal, or maybe 2022.
Yeah, right.
You can get back out there and commentate more because, yeah, that was cool. And I like how Red Bull is, well, they were attempting to like show racing to everyone in the world and do a really good job with the live streams, and then it wasn't available in like a dozen countries. And
well, it's a bummer because so different people own the rights for different series. So Red Bull doesn't own the rights for World Championships, and NBC does. So that's why that whole thing happens. Like, and I wouldn't. So it's actually crazy because like Rob and Claudio, the World Cup commentators don't actually go there on site. They don't have anyone on site. It's a totally different production thing, and it's just unfortunate because the way that in the US that it gets shown is like on that Olympic channel or something like that.
Yeah. That is what it is.
Totally. So yeah, totally not Red Bull's fault. I'll give them that one.
Yeah, just like weird.
It's just a bummer.
Licensing rights and
totally
stuff like that.
So
yeah. Oh, that might get worked out. That stuff changes all the time.
UCI.
Yep. Well, yeah. So speaking of UCI, yeah, we don't need to dive into that. But if you do want to get into UCI and way more like race specific stuff, probably Downtime Podcast, right?
Yeah, Downtime. Like, there's so much cool stuff on there. Where from like bike designers to World Cup racers, Nico Malali, who's another World Cup racer, and I do a post race podcast after each race, and it's really cool because Nico kind of goes into like, you know, here's how my day went. Here's the bike setup changes I did. Like, it rained on this day. There was this gnarly line here. So like a really in-depth kind of behind the scenes look at what goes on. But yeah, Chris is awesome over there.
Yeah. When we took over MTB Podcast, when Jonathan and Steven decided they were too busy with their other lives to continue it. Well, they did. I mean, they semi-decided that, and then I was like, "Hey, man, can we please just take this over? Because you've really done a good job, but you're not posting very often, and people are asking." But yeah, I mean, and then we kind of made the call to like, you know what, we're not going to really discuss racing much because when Jonathan and Steven started it, like, Downtime wasn't as big as it is now, and like there's a lot of good mountain bike podcasts now, and I think Downtime is awesome. And in terms of like in depth, like if you're an aspiring racer, that's an incredible podcast.
Yeah, totally.
And I thought, you know what, we definitely serve the average common weekend warrior mountain biker so much more and can bring value to that. So like we're just gonna maybe barely gloss over and not really talk about racing and continue just doing what we do best and leave that to the professionals like Chris at Downtime, right?
Totally.
So yeah, speaking of pro mountain bikers, something we want to talk about is world-class level pros, their bike and component choices. And I think there's some misconception there. Like weekend warrior mountain bikers, average mountain bikers can sort of I think they might take it with too much weight when they hear like, oh, like world championship winning XYZ component or bike. And you, Eliot, like are friends with all those guys, you racing yourself, you kind of know like there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff, and it's very different, right? Like if you're a top 50 World Cup rider and you're sort of like a privateer, what you're riding, I mean, how much do you care? Or it's just like, who's going to pay you any money? Because it's like not a glamorous sport full of money versus like if you're a top 5 rider, are you then pushing for certain brands? I mean, there's just a lot to it behind the scenes that I think people should take it with a grain of salt, like what the pros are using and maybe specifically what they're saying. But what's your thought on that?
Yeah, totally. I mean, like very bluntly, you're never going to say what you're riding is not good.
Like you're contractually obligated to say that.
Actually, yeah.
I
mean,
so
maybe you can
that
like.
In mind, people.
I think there is for sure. Like over the years, I've ridden some stuff that I'm more stoked on than others, and like sometimes I'll be like, yeah, it was good.
You can't name names.
But
contractually, this gentleman cannot name names.
Cannot name names.
But like other times, I'm like, dude, that is the best thing ever. And like, if you took it like good as maybe a 2, and like insane best thing I've ridden is like a 9. So like maybe there's like some little subtlety there, but yeah, you're totally right. So like I think the thing to think about like on the racing side of things is like when you're really low privateer, you get to pick every part you want, right? And like whatever that means to you, pick Fox, and then SRAM shifting and Shimano brakes, like doesn't really matter. You kind of get to do some stuff. And that's one of the nice things about being a privateer is that you can run the best stuff.
Because you're, for the most part, paying for it, or
Totally.
you're just getting it for free, maybe, if you're lucky.
Totally. Like I think
You're not getting paid to use it.
Totally, yeah. I think at the lower end of the World Cups, like if you are qualifying for World Cup, so qualifying for a World Cup is top 60, then you're getting free stuff. Qualifying for a World Cup is no joke, especially now. Maybe the pro at your local national level race, like outside the top 5, 10 or whatever, probably buying a lot of stuff, maybe getting some discounts from local bike shop. And then as you move up, so you have like kind of a more satellite-y team, which would mean like a Trek, but not Trek Factory. It's like Trek sponsored team. And that's typically you will have like maybe a little bit less good parts on, where you have to run it because I need, like you said, I need to be paid. I need somebody to pay my travel. And then once you get up into like the top 10, especially top 5, every one of those people before they ride for a team will like test out the bike because everyone's getting other offers, right? Like somebody Specialized is going to offer you something, Trek's going to offer you something, and like whatever, Santa Cruz. And so each of those riders, like Troy would go and say, let me ride a Canyon bike and make sure this thing actually works. And then, everyone's going to pay me a lot of money to do that, but you do get to pick and choose. Like, and I think one of the things that's really interesting here, like, is kind of what Aaron started, where there was a shift away from like, just these brands like
Aaron Gwynn, for those who don't know, he's
totally.
like one of the best downhill mountain bike racers
of all time.
Ever, all time. Yeah,
And so he kind of was like the first person to say like, I'm willing to, you would say maybe develop, but I would also put in like get paid a lot more money from brands that aren't as prestigious. Yep. Like a TRP or Anza tires or something like that. And so that was really different. And like, I know that that's also something for a rider, right? Like if I've grown up riding Fox, to go on to brand random, could be something. But yeah, I think to like, when you're thinking about listening or looking at advertising and things like that, it's more about you. It's like, what do you like? Like you can choose any part that you want, and like any part is good enough. Like SRAM is good enough, Fox is good enough, Shimano, like they're all can win races. And like, and the nice thing about mountain biking is like everyone's pretty much running stock stuff. So when you buy something off the shelf, like that can win a World Cup.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've always preached to people, is like so much of it's personal preference. There's like an endless array of good product. Yeah. And even like remotely reputable brands are making very competitive, great stuff right now.
Totally.
So
yeah. I mean, like,
don't overthink it too hard.
Right. Like if you looked, and if I buy brakes or something that are like lower end brakes, they're better than high end brakes that won a World Cup 5 years ago. So you're running good stuff.
Yeah, totally. I'm curious, Jared, you never got like as deep in the racing scene as myself, and especially not as Eliot.
Right.
What did like, as you as like as growing up, right, rode moto and then got into mountain biking, like what did you think when you sort of saw and heard the like, oh, these pedals are world championship worthy rainbow stripe pedals? Like, I mean, did that sway your choice, or what do you think?
Totally, 100%. I mean, when you see like somebody who's winning races and they're running that stuff, like you're like, oh, well, yeah, I should probably have that stuff because it'll make me a better rider. Yeah. Like, oh, yeah, that guy's got Fox Factory. Like, he's got Kashima. Like, I'll win if I have Kashima. Like, I'm going to beat my Strava time last time if I have Kashima. Like, yes.
And but, we were talking about that earlier. Like, I think, like, for my hobbies, I'm the same way, right? Yeah. Like, I was saying that in RC cars. Like, I would watch the dude at the RC car track, like, local fast guy. I'd be like, what is he running? Like, let me go to the bloody pro shop and get those tires because they're going to make me win.
Totally. 100%. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, if you see the best guys riding that stuff, like, you want to be riding that stuff too. Like, and that I'd pretty much say that's pretty universal.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I think brand's perception on it has like evolved, right? Because before it was, it was just the competitors. And then it became the competitors. Well, now it's the competitors plus the content creators. But like, no matter what, it's the people who are good, right? Like, you have to be talented. You have to have some notoriety, some credibility to like be on this thing and like be good at using it, for people to be like, oh yeah, man, like I want that one.
Totally.
I want that brand. I want that product. Whatever. Yeah. So yeah, that's cool. I mean, that plays into what I want to talk about next, which is the most impactful things the average weekend warrior mountain biker can learn from World Cup level professionals, which I think we've kind of touched on that a little bit, but bike choice is definitely one of them. And I know you're a proponent of like not overthinking it, and probably, and I'm like, I know racers not as well as you do, but a lot of them, and they certainly do not care about their components and their setup as much as probably most average mountain bikers do. Some do, right? So like, I wanted to ask you, if you were to like look at the top 80 World Cup downhill racers, what percentage do you think are maniacal OCD about like the angle of their brake lever, the millimeter width of the bars, their tire pressure down to the single PSI, versus like, and then there's probably like another batch of people who are like kind of care, they want it kind of good, but they're just going to go out and pin it. And then like there's a percentage of riders that are like, yeah, whatever, it's fine. Like, totally. Just like the mechanic built it and I just went as fast as I could on it. Yeah. So like, what do you think? What's like the percent, what's the pie chart of the best mountain bikers in the world and how they like look at this stuff?
Yeah, for sure. I think in recent years, in the top 30, it's everyone, because you have to.
So you're saying the top 30 of World Cup downhill racers are like maniacal OCD?
I wouldn't say maniacal, right? Like some people you'll be doing like spoke tension stuff. Yeah. And some people, there's these two different camps, and neither one of them's right. It's just personal preference, where you're saying, do I want to set up the bike to perform the best on this specific terrain? So there's a 2-inch bump. Do I want to set my bike up to handle that 2-inch bump? Or do I want to set my bike up once and know my bike to a T and know exactly how it's going to handle that 2-inch bump? Totally. And so I think the riders who are like, I'm just going to get a setup and ride it, are, riders like Bernard Kerr. And he just wants to know his bike like super well. But like even him, he's like, I don't know if he's still doing it, but like you'd have a tire cut. You'd have like, you're checking your pressures. You know exactly how many clicks you're running or what pressure you're running in your fork. Riders
so,
like...
Quickly though, tire cut. That's not an average mountain biker doesn't know what that is. So quickly explain that.
So like, I think it's falling out of fashion a little bit. It started because tires companies kind of only, I was talking about spikes.
Weren't listening. So people had to cut them, physically cut the knobs.
Totally. So it started because you would have a spike tire, which has really long knobs. And so it was good for wet conditions, but the knobs were actually too long. So you'd do a cut spike, and that was kind of a thing. And then it became like a thing to like cut a Minion DHR, like Bryceland started it. And he would cut a little piece of the side knob off.
Yeah, like the L side knob.
Totally.
Which is the same on the Minion DHF.
Right.
I did that in like 2009 when I was racing. Right. It's like, oh, here's a DHF. It works amazing, but it's a little too muddy for a DHF, but it's not muddy enough for spikes. So I'm like going to legitimately cut the L knobs off of the tire.
Right.
So it clears mud better.
Totally. And so it's like that kind of goes into the realm of like what I was saying about that it's mental, right? Like, and saying somebody doesn't need to cut their tire, like what the benefit of that is physically is whatever, what the benefit of that is mentally is definitely a lot more.
Yeah.
And at that level, when you get to that level in anything that you're doing, any sport, business, school, whatever, it's more about the mental side of it. And it's more about knowing what's going to make you perform. So yeah, I think now riders are concentrating on the bike a lot more because the sport is maturing a lot more. Everyone's training really hard. So if I can get an extra 5 or 10% out of my bike, then I have to do that. But I think the interesting thing that you would find is like, as soon as you take somebody out of that race context, take them and like put them in Whistler, like was riding with Troy a couple of years ago.
Troy
Brosnan, sorry.
Okay. Remember to say these things. We're not all friends with Troy Brosnan.
Here we go. And like we were riding A-line and I would see him like day after day. And like, I think one of the days, his like tire was like wobbly and like touching his frame because he had like been doing whips. He'd been riding for like 2 weeks.
So like for context, this is one of the best mountain bikers in the world. Worked with Maxxis to design the Dissector, the tire, which probably everyone knows about. Super good tire. Junior world champion. Did he win world champion?
He has the best actually over or like average finish. I think it's like a 2 or 3, like way better than anyone else who's ever raced a mountain bike. Like his average finish at the World Cups, like always on the podium.
Unusually consistent.
Yeah, like
incredibly talented.
Just
rider.
like one of the greatest downhill mountain bikers of all time. And I think that it's something you find where it's like you can ride anything.
Yeah,
right?
So
like
you're a Whistler with him, and his tire's literally so blown out, it's like hitting his frame.
Yeah,
and
like
he's just riding.
The rim, right? Like the rim is bent.
Is so
like,
bad.
And like I used to do that all the time. Like, right? Like it's like, it could stop riding. Like a couple of spokes are loose, but they'll probably last for a couple more runs. Yeah. And like, luckily I didn't have to worry about buying a new rim or whatever.
Yep.
But I just think it's the biggest thing that people can do is just ride. Right. Yeah. The thing that makes these people so good is that they've ridden bikes way more than the average person. I've like for jumps and things like that, like I've ridden thousands and thousands of jumps. And the reason that it's that you get those skills, you know exactly what the bike's going to do. And so the thing that you're concentrating on is like, is not like my rebound's too fast or my tire pressure is too low. It's like, what does the bike do in this situation? Like, what does it feel like to go over these routes or off this jump? And the advice that I always give is just like, have fun, like just have a good time and you'll enjoy riding bikes, which means you'll which means you'll ride more, which means you'll get better. And then like, it's just all good.
Brilliant. It's a vicious cycle.
Good flywheel going there.
It's cool. I like it. I mean, it's like the most impactful things average rider can take from that, right? Is just like, ride more, have fun,
and like not worry about it so much. Like
don't stress.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Like I mean, there's this like one technique thing that I think about that was really big for me is like weighting the outside foot, and then like when you lean the bike, you could think of like a lot of weight going on your outside foot and your inside hand. So you're like actually pushing. If you're going around a left-hand turn, your right foot's down, and your left hand's kind of like pushing forward and down. And I think that's really different than a lot of people thinking about. People in the YouTube video will see, but taking the outside hand over, like it's like this rather than this. I don't know how you explain that over audio.
Yeah, it's hard to say, but I mean, if you were to sum that up, you would pretty much say like bike technique, coaching, worrying about your form, like that's impactful.
Yeah, it's like time and a place, right? Like sometimes you do stuff for entertainment and sometimes you do stuff like deliberate practice. And like I would say personally, like there are a couple things, like never a bad idea to get some coaching or think about some technique, but like you can ride a bike in a million different ways, and like don't stress too much about some perfect technique or whatever. Just ride, and whatever you're comfortable with is probably good.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I personally like to go for like what I call flow rides myself. That's just like the name I made up. But that's basically when I go by myself. I'm not riding with anyone else. And I don't really, I do this every now and then. I definitely do it every time if I've been off a bike for a while, right? Like if I had an injury or, whatever, I worked my face off for too long and I didn't ride bikes for 4 weeks. Then I'll go for a ride by myself. And all I will do is I won't ride at a fast pace. I'll ride at like 60, 70%, and I'll just constantly think about like, is my pedal stroke good on the climb?
Yeah, totally.
I'm like, is my whole upper body too tense on a climb? So I think about my form, my technique, and then on the downhill, I think about the same stuff, right? Like, are my braking points good? Am I touching my brakes in my corners? Or am I not? Mm-hmm. Like, am I weighting properly? And you can work on your technique by just riding far less than your skill level, and just being a little bit more conscious of like, is my form proper? Am I following like the right proper guidelines?
Totally.
Like weighting your outside foot, not braking in corners, just like doing the right thing. So that's helped me a ton.
Yeah, for sure.
Jared?
Totally. Weighting the outside foot.
That?
I'm taking notes. I'm taking notes right now. Yeah, totally. Like pretty much exactly what you said. Like, and honestly, that kind of thing is like totally changed how I've been riding too. Just like thinking about your technique a little bit more and not like just thinking, oh my God, I'm going to go as fast as I possibly can. Like beat my last Strava time or whatever it is.
Yeah, because like if you're just reinforcing bad habits at that point,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like if you have some bad habits in terms of technique and form, and you're just going out trying to crush your Strava times, like
Exactly.
you're just going to reinforce and really get sketchy on bad form.
Totally. Yeah, it's like forget about the Strava, just have fun and think about your technique and your form, and then you'll have more fun and you're going to be a better rider at the end of the day. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. I love it, man.
Totally.
Well, yeah, hopefully that was valuable. I had too much whiskey for you listeners out there.
Wow.
Valuable.
Valuable. So I need to talk less. Jared, you've queued up some questions from our audience, from our listeners, our Instagram and YouTube followers.
Correct.
For Eliot and just things in general. Fire them off, man.
Sweet. Here we go. So this question comes to us from Raymond Sucks. He asks, when can we see another race run in slippers? But for real, is there anything you think more people can do on a daily basis to make our sport more inclusive? What are some things riders can do to help grow Cycling Foundation, even if they cannot make donations because of financial hardships?
Totally. Yeah, we touched on this a little bit, like, but to sum it up, I think it's just like really basic. It's just like being nice.
Being make the sport more welcoming.
Totally. Yeah, totally.
Be nice to people.
Yeah. Just like, and it's all people, right? Like it's just welcoming people in, remembering that we all were beginners once. We all were goons. We all had knee pads that were off-centered.
We're all kooks and goons.
Right. Yeah. So it's just like 100%. Think back maybe to last week and like remember that you might not have been as good as you are now, and just make sure that you are keeping that in mind and welcoming people in and making cycling a better place.
Nice. Yeah. Great. Perfect.
That was great, except you dodged the slipper question.
Totally. So,
so some context. Eliot is like notorious would probably be the word for wearing slippers, like DVS slipper. Like these are like casual, like you're walking out of your shower slippers, and he wears them while riding mountain bikes. And like we posted a video on Instagram of him going over the handlebars after a seat bounce, wearing slippers at Sea Otter. Anyways. What I never even asked you. Like I just thought it was like a funny thing you did, but you wore those for like you still. Well, I was surprised you didn't have them on when you walked in here. You're wearing sandals.
Yeah, I know. I went through this phase like where I would just like it was like DVS slippers, but also like CVS and Rite Aid slippers, where they have this like aisle where they just everyone should go there.
Yeah, really? I've done that.
You can go and just pick them out of a bin, and they're like $5, and I would just buy those and wear them with everything I did. Like nice restaurant, wear the slippers. People think they're expensive. You can wear them like walking the track, like out to whatever around the house. And I was at Sea Otter, like I was just having fun and went to seat bounce to jump, and my friend had rode my bike and put the seat down and it hit the tire and I crashed, and now like a whole generation thinks that you can't seat bounce a mountain bike, which is sad. But yeah, so went over the bars and it's Pink Bike. I was talking to Carl, who's one of the owners of Pink Bike, and he was like, as soon as I saw that video, I told them to slow it down as slow as it would go and post it on the homepage.
Nice.
Yeah. Full credit to Pink Bike for filming that. And
thank you, Pink Bike. Nice. Thanks, Carl.
So bottom line, there is a performance benefit to the slippers on a bike.
I would say that they let you feel the pedal. You really need pedal feel, and they give you that.
All right.
Yeah.
That's what I was looking for. Perfect. Nice. Awesome. Sweet. Next question, shall we? This one comes to us from RBRCHKN. Was it a penny or a nickel that you saw on the ground that made you take a dive on that jump?
It was funny because I actually wasn't racing that year. I was like taking a year off, and I remember I got down to the finish and I was like, I just had the biggest crash I've had in like years. And
like it got a little bit bigger than it should have been, because it was like
it's bloody over the bars.
You're a professional mountain biker, like of serious notoriety, and not only that, but like you're known for being so skilled at jumps and whips and scrubs, and like you're incredible at that, like legitimately incredible at it, like better than the rest of the field, you know. And then all of a sudden, like here he is on like a 5-foot tabletop at Sea Otter downhill, which is like the most joke of a downhill race, and just full blown front flips over himself. So that's why it was like ended up being such. If anyone else did it, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, dude, like yeah, I went over the bars 100 times. Like everyone goes over the bars." But like when you're you and you do it, like it was just more of a big deal.
Just
so it was
bloody reliving my glory days.
Yeah. So when we were like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna have Eliot on the podcast,"
dredge this up.
I immediately was like, "Hey, let's get that video of Eliot when he front flipped."
The bloody Wayback Machine, archive.org.
No, just kidding. You're never gonna live this one down.
So
No, I'm down with it.
It was incredible crash.
I feel like I look good doing it.
Survived it. I mean, that was insane. Sweet. All right. Next question comes to us from Eddie Raya, 7369. He says, "I see mountain biking going more and more in the direction of E-type equipment and bikes, and eventually think all bikes will have some sort of assist type technology. Is this a good or bad trend?"
I mean, I think I kind of understand both sides. Like it creates like a very visceral reaction with people. I've never been like that person who's like, you gotta ride up so you can earn your turns, and like I actually hate doing that anyway. So I mean, I think it's great that like now one of my friends has a heart condition, and he used to actually be a XC racer, and the only way he can ride is on an e-bike. And he gets out and he coaches the high school team, and so you have people like that who, you know, wouldn't be able to ride otherwise. Yeah. And I think that that's amazing. And so, yeah, I do see the point of, you know, people going on illegal trails and creating more traffic and things like that. But, you know, what would happen if people got really fit all of a sudden?
It's oddly more controversial than it should be.
Yeah.
Like it's just a e-bike.
Yeah, totally.
And I mean, it makes it more accessible for people with a heart condition or people that don't have the chance to ride a ton. Like,
right, exactly.
Why is it this huge controversial topic that people are all pissed off about?
I think it's like also like a thing where it's like you're saying like you have to be this fit or whatever to ride this trail. Like this trail is not accessible to like non-fit people, which
mountain biking is really hard. Like I think everyone listening knows that. Like it's just a hard sport. I mean, whether you've been doing it for a decade or like you just got into it, like it is aerobically very, very challenging. At least if you're riding actual mountains. But either way, like it's just a hard sport. So yeah, e-bikes have changed the landscape a ton, made it more accessible to people who aren't in super stud shape, and like it gets more fun when you're in better shape because you can ride longer and you can ride faster and you can just feel better mentally, physically the entire time. And not everyone has the ability to do that or the time or, you know, physical condition, whatever. So it's e-bikes are a cool little thing there.
Totally. I feel like that's like a good example of that. Just like, you know, not everyone has the time or energy or capability to like ride 50 hours a week or whatever, you know? Yep. So if like an old couple wants to go out, or even the person that has a full-time job is working 70 hours a week and they need an e-bike so they can actually go and ride, like should be all good.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel to me, it's deja vu because being in the bike industry when the whole thing went away from 26, right? It was 26 to 29. It was kind of like before 27.5 was invented. It was like 4 years of banter. Of like, oh, it's right, it's wrong, it's stupid, oh, it's that, oh, like it was just like so much, and now no one even talks about. Right. It's like, we're done with this.
Yeah, right. You know, if you're riding at 26, it would be like, ugh.
Yeah. So now it's like 4 years from now, it's like the ship is gonna have sailed on e-bikes, and like some people will use them, some people won't. Like it's all fine. Like the world goes on. It's really, I don't know. We posted a photo of an e-bike and said on Instagram and said, do you want to see more e-bike content from us? And there was like a hardcore amount of trolls pissed. Yeah. And I was like, wow, that seems...
It's very visceral. Like it's very much like very polarizing thing. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, to me, like you look at any like pro mountain biker and everyone loves e-bikes. Even if you can't. Yeah,
they do. Like pro mountain bikers are using them all the time.
Yeah, because it's just like, I love riding my bike and I can actually ride my bike more if I have motor.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, I was talking to Nico Mullally, who you mentioned earlier, good friend of mine. His younger brother Logan Mullally, also a good friend of mine, and worked for Worldwide Cyclery for several years. I was just chatting with him recently. We obviously still stay in touch and are still friends. And we were just chatting about the e-bike thing, and he was saying that Nico and Dakota Norton, another professional World Cup downhill racer who's very, very good, are riding e-bikes a lot more. And that they're still putting in like the same, like physically, like they're looking, those guys are data nerds, right? So like they're looking at heart rates and they have power meters and like they're doing training at a very, very high level, and they're still doing it to the same extent. They're just covering more ground.
Right. Exactly.
So like, yeah, it's not like they're just going up hills being late. They're just going up the hills faster.
Yeah.
They're just riding more miles. So like the heart rate data shows that it's exactly the same exercise, but they've covered 2 times the amount of miles. So I don't know. It is interesting to see like all these different use cases for these things, and I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's just like
stuff.
One of those things where it's just like another tool. Like I don't know. I just don't feel like it should be that big of a deal.
I know. I agree. I completely agree.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Speaking of bikes, let's finish off here with what are we riding? Bikes, trails, components, etc. I will go first. Why not? Because I'm excited to talk about. I just went to Moab. I think on the last 2 podcasts I said I was going to Moab. I went there. It was a ton of fun. I posted sort of a recap of it on Kettle Mountain's Instagram. For those of you that don't know, Kettle Mountain is an apparel brand that we, as in Worldwide Cyclery, owns. And I had a great time. Have you been to Moab, Eliot?
No, never.
So it's like the rockiest rocks of rocks on rocks. It was just pure rock. I mean, I honestly didn't think the riding was amazing if you like rocky rocks piled on rocks, and just incredible scenery. I'm more of like I would rather ride A-line and dirt merchant, like flow type jump trails and berms. That's kind of more my thing, but I still had a good time. Liam went with me and had a good time, and we went with Chasing Epic, and there was 12 other people, and it was a super good, fun, amazing trip, but I was pumped on that. I rode my Uno Dash, my Italian stallion, Spanish stallion.
Ooh, almost let you get away with that
Spaniard stallion. It's a Spanish. It's one of the few bikes that's made, only carbon bike made in Europe. I don't know. It's
wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. They make 50 of them a year. I have number 24 of 50
per model.
Per model, 50 per model. Yeah, I just sold
Boutique.
Very boutique.
I just sold that Uno, and now I'm building up a Revel Ranger, which to me is like, it's 115 mil travel in the back, 120 in the front. Super fun, quote unquote, down country bike. I'm excited to ride. I mean, I already rode it, like our test bike when we had it before we did the review and everything. Super fun. So I'm excited for that. That's my new mountain bike. That's where I just rode. Pumped on that. Jared, have you changed since the last episode?
I've just been riding both of my bikes,
which are
my Yeti SB150 and SB115. A little bit of suicide action over here. One of my favorite local trails.
Suicide is the name of the trail.
Yes.
Just to be clear, that can be very confusing.
Yes. Been riding Suicide, one of our favorite local trails.
Yeah.
I'm just praying for the rain, man. It's just so blown out and dusty.
Yeah.
I need that rain.
Yeah, so last episode, Nate Hills was on the podcast, and he was out here hanging out with us. We rode some bikes. We rode Suicide Trail. He posted the full video of that on his YouTube channel, which was rad. Have you ever used a Skydio? You know what that is? So it's a drone with the camera on it.
That. Yeah,
so like,
and it follows you, right?
We're at the top of the trail, and he just throws this thing up, and then it just followed us down the whole trail.
Super
and he didn't even touch it until we got to the very bottom.
Yeah,
it was
that's
rad.
crazy.
Yeah, it was cool. So check that out. It's on Nate Hill's YouTube channel. That was a really fun time, but Suicide is the name of that trail. It's a big, rocky, beefy trail. That's what Jared rides his 150 on. 150 mil travel, 29er.
Yeah.
What's the front? 160? 170.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dang.
Sweet.
It's a great bike.
Yeah, that's a monster. It's good for that trail.
Perfect.
Eliot, what bikes are you riding right now?
When I haven't really ridden that much. If I'm not riding my downhill bike, which I haven't since March, I ride my Trance, which is like, I don't know how much travel it has. Like
140 or
no, it's like 120 in the front and
You're
110.
really not representing your sponsor that good right now.
I think it's
I
just
hate
like
to call you out, but
no. I think I'm representing them great because it doesn't even matter how much travel is. It's just an
I like
insane
that.
bike.
You spun that well.
No, it's
You should
like
get into politics.
no, I literally ride that bike. I rode it for Trans-Cascadia. I rode it. That's all I ride. For me, like the smaller travel bikes are super fun. I've never been like a big trail bike person, but I think it makes it a little bit sweet to have like a little bit of travel. And I ride, Maxxis tires, DHF in the front, DHR2 in the back. The only combo you should ever think about.
Speaking of tire combos, we just did a video all about like my favorite tire combos. I did say that one because that is a good one.
There's just no reason.
So you're running that on your trail bike. Do you also run it on your downhill bike?
Totally. Yeah. Like
same sizes, the same widths?
Yeah, 235, right? Like there's no, I think it's 235. Maybe it's 2.5.
2.5?
Yeah, you're probably running 2.5 in the front and then 2.4 in the back.
Yeah, so that's...
See, this, ladies and gentlemen, is how much professional mountain bikers really pay attention to this stuff.
Well, it's like...
they get it... honestly, I think you just forget, though, because like you've had this figured out for a long time, and like you don't even look at those numbers.
Totally, like I know, like there was talk about like some people would sometimes go to like the 2.7 or whatever.
Yeah, in the front.
Front, but that has not been a thing for a while. And so it's like, it totally doesn't matter. But what I don't know my tire pressure. I usually just pump it up to around 30 or something like that. On my downhill bike it was like 24, 27. Yeah. And then Shimano stuff. I rode in Santa Cruz this past week, was up there. One of my friends is doing this like 1 million miles of climbing. So she's like, has a 9-to-5 job and she just goes and
that is so
wow.
climbing.
Nice.
in a year. So, rode with her and like caught her on the hour 5 of her ride. So, did that in Santa Cruz and wish that we had good trails like that down here.
That was on your giant Trance?
Yep.
Yeah. 29-inch wheels?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nice.
The only way.
Weren't you riding a gravel bike too for a little bit?
No gravel. I ride a lot of road.
Road? Really?
Not recently. I'm super out of shape.
Just to get in shape for that Saks underwear photo
Baby.
shoot.
I'm actually crazy out of shape right now. But I think it's because we live in some like world-class area for road biking.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's just nice. Like go out there, listen to podcasts, listen to the MTB Podcast by Worldwide Cyclery. And and the Eliot Jackson episode's super good. And so it's just a good time.
Yeah, I like it. Well, cool. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Don't forget any feedback, comments, questions, concerns. Hit us up at podcast@worldwidecyclery.com. Please remember to rate and review where you get your podcast. They say that on the Wall Street Journal podcast. Jared's just dying laughing at me right now because I said that. I don't care if you review us. I don't even know what that does. But
what if I left a
always
nasty
says that.
review?
Well, then I'd be like, well, that was me.
So you do care.
We do care.
I honestly have not got into the world of podcasts and how they rank and why ratings matter, but if you feel compelled to rate us, go ahead. Anyways, massive thank you to Adam, who helps put this whole thing on internally here at Worldwide Cyclery, and of course Scott Jackson, also known as DJ Pineapple. He's just shaking his head laughing at me right now. DJ Pineapple, run some sound effects and close this out. Make it